Welcome to Accelerate OC, the only show focused on the people leading innovation in Orange County. Join our host, Kerry Ransom, in his conversations with the trendsetters, entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders here, because it's time to Accelerate OC.
Good morning. Welcome to Accelerate OC. I'm Kerry Ransom, and along with my engineer, Paul, thank you for making us always sound so good here at Accelerate OC. Today's episode is sponsored by my friend Jeff Martin from Collective Genius. Jeff and his group at Collective Genius, they build high-performing teams. They do that for venture-backed growth companies and venture capital firms. And one of his offerings that I particularly like, especially this time of year, is called Peak Planning. And it's an off-site facilitated leadership session where he has tools to really help align a leadership team around the 3-year vision of a company, a 1-year plan, and those quarterly OKRs that companies want to put in place. And he also provides a bunch of tools to help them stay on track. And at this time of year, we're starting to get into the fourth quarter. Always a good time to think about 2020, what's ahead for a leadership team, and Jeff can help really bring that to life. So if you're interested in peak planning, let me know. I'm happy to introduce you to Jeff. I'm super excited to have my friend Fauad Hasan here today. And before we hear about his amazing story, and I'm sure some great words of wisdom as an entrepreneur and a leader, let me tell you a little bit about him. He was most recently the CEO of a company here called Bonti, which was a biotech startup that he co-founded back in 2015. And it was focused in the area of biologics, where he saw there was really a need. He was right, as well, as the company had amazing success and was acquired by Allergan about a year ago. Before Bonti, he was actually an executive at Allergan. So he left Allergan to start Bonti, only to then sell Bonti back. Great story, and he'll tell us more about that. But he was focused there in areas of biologics development and manufacturing, and I think that was where a lot of the genesis of the idea came from. So we'll learn more for sure. He's had an amazingly successful career in the biopharmaceutical industry and was at both big companies, Baxter and Regeneron, before Allergan. He has developed really an amazing reputation, as I've talked to a lot of other people here in Orange County, as an innovator and a leader in the industry. And he's already at work on his next venture called ORNOVI, which he's committed and is going to build right here in Orange County. And so you can see why I'm bringing him on Accelerate OC, as Fauad's very committed to the opportunities to really innovate here in our community. He's currently on the board of an organization called BioPharm, as well as Octane. He's a great example of an entrepreneur driving innovation and making it happen here in Orange County. Fauad, it's great to have you here.
Pleasure to be here, Kerry.
Well, let's get to the starting line. As I teased, you did a really interesting thing by leaving Allergan, starting Bonti. Introduce the audience to that story.
Absolutely. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and just being in the ecosystem, apparently there is a bug in my head about being an entrepreneur. Obviously, I started as a scientist, focusing on developing new medicines for going after unmet needs in oncology space. And at Allergan, I was working on very cool technologies in ophthalmology. And the greatest drug that I like is Botox, which people don't realize. 60% of the Botox applications for medical use, for therapeutic use, things like migraine. And being in that environment, you're always looking for next innovation. What can I do to make things better, right? And I'll tell you about ORNOVI for that reason as well too. There's a link to that. So being in R&D for some time and finding different applications, I always wanted to that at some point in my career I want to be an entrepreneur and take the experience that I built and take it to the next level. Biotech is a bit different than high tech, where you see a lot of entrepreneurs that are much more early age and coming after colleges and whatnot. In biotech, most of the entrepreneurs you would see, they will go to corporate and they will come after that, take the experience that they have gained and develop a new opportunity. That for me triggered in 2014 when Allergan was being taken in a hostile bid by a company called Valiant, and I thought this would be a good time to do something different, and I followed that approach and the mentality. And in 2015, I got a team together after I left Allergan. In May, I left Allergan. June, I founded the company with the team, and I started Bonti, focusing on next generation neurotoxin, which is obviously what Botox is about. Botox has done great, but there are other similar types of molecules that this class has that can provide unmet need in both aesthetic application and medical application. So we started with that idea, and in about 3 years, we made great progress. And being small and nimble, you can achieve more than a big company, and we were able to create value for the company that resulted in our M&A last year.
That's really, really great story. So as you talk about the hostile maneuver that Valiant was pursuing of Allergan at the time as sort of the genesis, did you fear, because I think a lot of people, when that was happening, thought, okay, they're going to buy Allergan, they're going to cut way back on R&D,
right,
and just kind of
Absolutely.
milk the cash flow. Did you sort of see that as an opportunity to say, there's going to be a ton of research and development opportunity outside if this goes through? Ultimately, it didn't go through, but
right.
Is that really what spurred it for you?
Yeah, one of the amazing things people don't realize that Allergan's been around in Orange County for 60 plus years.
Yes.
So in fact, they only had four CEOs, I believe, right? Gavin Herbert basically started this whole organization many years ago. And when that event was taking place, you kind of knew that the dynamics will change. It won't be the same Allergan that's been around here for a long period of time. And in fact, it happened when the company got acquired by activists. They still kept the name Allergan, but the headquarters moved to Dublin, Ireland, and with the U.S. operation in New Jersey. So this Orion campus has been a thriving campus of 4,000 people. Wasn't the same anymore, right? And obviously, with different management, different focus areas. So that to me was a trigger that some of the things that we were able to do in the old Allergan, the innovation that we were going after, and especially thriving in this ecosystem in Orange County, wasn't going to be the same. So I thought it'd be good to take the matters in your own hand. Sure. and build the opportunity and stay local as much as possible. I mean, this is a great place for innovation, where especially in ophthalmology and skincare, I mean, we are the center of excellence.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a lot of people, if you look at other innovation communities or innovation ecosystems out there, would point to that M&A activity or liquidity activity. I mean, Allergan was obviously public here for a long time, but my impression from the outside was always that people stayed there for long periods of time. It was a great place to work. You could sort of have your cake and eat it too. You could have a very good living, but also work on innovative things. But often that gets stirred up when there is an acquisition of some kind. So, not having a great view into it, it would seem to me that there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity around here now because of that. Is that the case?
It's a very fair assessment, Kerry, and especially when companies like Allergan, who've been around here for a long time, and partly because I created my growth, my development, and becoming a successful entrepreneur later on was due to the time I spent at Allergan. So. Obviously events like, and M&As do happen in the industry, right? But I feel that those, events lead to opportunity.
That's right.
As well. And I think, in fact, there are people, obviously Bonti was one story, and there are other stories that are coming out, as a result of those M&As, and not just here, but also in East Coast or up in Silicon Valley, but I think, it's just the experience you built, and you still have to have the sort of a mindset as well, too, about, what's the next opportunity I can build and create something out of it.
Sure. Well, and to that, you've had the experience, you've had the success, and you sure seem to me to be still very hungry to do it again. And so we've talked a little bit about ORNOVI. What's the genesis of that as sort of your next entrepreneurial adventure? Absolutely.
In healthcare, one of the, and just like physicians as well too, my motto is in essence is to, how do I, and partly because of my engineer training, I'm a chemical engineer by background, it's always looking for process improvements, right?
Sure.
So in healthcare, it's all about how do we make patients' life better. ORNOVI is, it's based on two words, orno, which is in a Latin word to make something better. V in French is life, right? So in essence, the combination of how do you make life better And that's a mantra that we will pick on with ORNOVI, and we'll be focusing on two key areas where we have the expertise. Again, leveraging on the environment we're in, where ophthalmology and dermatology / aesthetics has been very successful stories. That's what Allergan built the whole programs on, with Botox and Restasis and others. So given that dynamics are changing here as well too, I want to tap into the resources here. I want to tap into experience here and build the next company that's going to focus on improving people's life, and especially in eye care and skincare.
That's great. Well, let's go under the hood a little bit. So you went to school down here in Southern California,
Yes.
and then you spent quite a bit of time away. You were
Yes.
up in the Bay Area for
East
a while
Coast, yeah.
as well, and then I think you've been back here around 10 years. What drew you back to the area?
Well, so I grew up in Silicon Valley, as I mentioned earlier, and as a kid grew up in San Jose. And for me, my biggest dream was to go live in New York. It's the biggest opportunity. And I was fortunate enough that my first job out of school was working for Genron in New York State. I lived in the city and commuted to Westchester County. But I could never find anything that's similar to where I grew up in San Jose, the Silicon Valley. And the only place I could come close to when I was here doing my education was Orange County, and there was a lot of similarity to it, right? And I mean, think about the access to standard of living here. The weather is great. I mean,
Yes.
great schools. I mean, you have a great universities as well too, and more importantly, I mean, innovation as well. To me, I couldn't find any better place where you can raise a family and have a professional career as well too. So that similarity between Silicon Valley and here is something that it drew upon me to live here, and I've been here for about 11 years now. So I really enjoy
Sure.
it.
That's great. So how do you think about Orange County as an innovation community? I mean, I primarily lived in the tech world. You definitely are more in the biotech, biopharma world. But innovation, in some respects, is innovation.
Yeah.
How do you think about Orange County today as a place where innovation can, or maybe in some cases doesn't happen as much as it
Okay, I mean, I think there's a lot going on. I mean, people don't realize, that, in Orange County, I mean, we're about 3 million population. I think Santa Clara County is about 1 million or 2 million there. I mean, we're actually we have more resources than the Santa Clara County up in Bay Area. I mean, as I mentioned, healthcare has been great. I mean, two of the biggest, company in ophthalmology, Allergan was here. Edwards is here, was the biggest medical device company as well too. So people don't realize in this ecosystem there's so much stuff happening. But I think what hasn't been happening here is the creating awareness, exposure out there, and putting Orange County on the map, right? And I think we need some of that as well. I mean, last time I checked, I think there's about 90 companies focusing on ophthalmology alone.
Wow.
That's huge, and people don't realize that.
It has to be the highest density of anywhere in the world.
Exactly. And not to mention, when it comes to in tech, this space well with in telecom and wireless and mobile devices. There's so much stuff as well. In fact, I mean, now that I spend more time listening to entrepreneurs, right? Last 3 pitches that I got were actually tech companies focusing on how to improve the telecommunication and wireless. So I mean, there's so much happening. Yeah, I think it's just that we gotta do a better job in getting that exposure to these entrepreneurs and put this on the map.
Sure. Well, and I mean, you mentioned telecom, wireless. Obviously, Broadcom has gone through a similar M&A scenario as Allergan, and at least from the things that I'm hearing, there's been a bit of a resurgence in entrepreneurial activity around chips and other things here. And so I think part of what led me to start the show was just to try to highlight some of that, because I think for many residents here in Orange County, it still feels like a suburban bedroom community that is a place people go to sort of live life, but not in such a dynamic way as you might in a city like New York or somewhere else. But to your point, there's a lot of really exciting developments occurring here. So I know we were talking last week about this convergence of healthcare where you've lived and tech where I've lived, and that more and more we're probably going to have that cross-pollination. What are thoughts you have on how we can bring those communities together more effectively?
Oh, it's a huge opportunity. I mean, for example, just this, the artificial intelligence platform, that's going to make such a big difference in our business, healthcare, getting access to data. I mean, imagine, if you can have a better appreciation of the disease pathology, what's causing some of these disease to take place, and what demographics and so on. There's so many unknowns that we still don't know yet in healthcare, right? So I think I see a huge opportunity where data analytics can play a big role in improving drug development, and how do you make drugs that are medicines that are obviously going to treat some of the patients where we are not seeing a response rate right now. I mean, dermatology is one space that the biggest drug right now for atopic dermatitis, eczema, the response rate is about 25%, which is pretty low. How do you bump that up? I mean, I think this is where I see a lot of opportunities. I mean, not just that. I mean, oncology is another area where a lot of stuff is happening, which I think is going to be exciting for next few years to come. But where I think the combination of using the data or analytics to get a better appreciation of development of drug, disease pathology, those are things going to make a big difference.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to find ways to get our friends together and create some of those mashups or collisions where some of the computer engineers and some of the chemical
I think Google has taken
engineers.
some initiative in Bay Area where they are opening up this platform. We're allowing people to use that to tap into some of the huge databases. So I think some of that work is starting to, but I think we need to push it a bit more.
Yeah,
for sure.
Great. So you've been through the entrepreneurial venture creation entire life cycle process once. You're starting down that pathway again. As you think about the first time and now the second time, you learned a lot, no doubt, as I've seen in every venture I've done. I've learned a lot. But as you look at the community, I have a lot of listeners here who are excited about how to support entrepreneurs like you here. What are things you feel like our community should be doing more of to help more companies get off the ground and be successful here?
No, it's funny you mentioned that. I was kind of thinking about this on the way here this morning. I'm a big proponent of whatever I can, experience that I have gained is to pass it on to the next one, and to watch the success happen as well. I think from community perspective, it would be great to. I was just at City Hall for some reason. I thought it'd be great to have a little desk over there where an entrepreneur can walk in and say, hey, if I want to start a company, how do I go about it, right? So I think there might be engagement the way I think the county office or city can take in encouraging some of the entrepreneurship, whether it's in any field, whether healthcare, tech, or any other area as well too. To me, I also start with the individual as well too. There has to be an idea, and I always recommend to people that never shy away from having a conversation. If you have an idea, talk about it. And find someone in your space, and even if you get turned down or get rejected, don't give up. There'll be someone out there who listen to you, and you just never know. Someone will pick up the idea. All these successful stories in Silicon Valley, they always had rejections, before they became successful. So even for me, when I first started off, there are a lot of people, just shut me down. Like, nah, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But you got to stay firm and find individuals who can listen to you and advise you in the right direction.
Absolutely. One of the criticisms I've heard of folks in Orange County, I don't know if this is the case in your space in biopharma, is that in many cases they look or appear as if they're in a bubble here in Orange County, and maybe they don't see how broad the competition is on a global scale. That they look around Orange County, they don't see anybody else doing what they're doing, and they say, oh, I'll start this because nobody else here is doing it. As you think about doing that sort of market or competitive analysis in biopharma, is it a similar thing, or do you feel like when you have 90 ophthalmology companies here, you have a much better ability to gauge what the real global market is?
Well, look, you got to start with an idea, and I think in essence, to understand a better value proposition. And once you do a bit of homework and get a better appreciation of the market space you're going after, you'll get a better appreciation of how big the market size is. I would never discourage someone if their opportunity is only 50 million versus $1 billion opportunity. In fact, just as a joke, every entrepreneur thinks that their idea is about $1 billion idea, right? So, but you always find people who are interested in even a 50 million, $100 million opportunity. So I would not limit yourself just to what size the market opportunity is. I think the key is to is just to have the mindset that's thinking. I think in our environment there is much better. Sorry.
Yeah, all good.
And especially in here, there's a lot of good stuff going on at UCI, for example, and with the Innovation Center, and but mostly focusing on tech coming out of UCI. But we also got to get other entrepreneurs outside UCI to get engaged as well too. Okay. So the bubble you were talking about, yes, in a way it does exist for a little bit, but you'd be surprised that there are people who are thinking outside the box and thinking much more global than local scene here as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, and I think that's something we have to encourage the entrepreneurs in many cases here to use the resources that are here, but also be open. And I think with the internet, obviously, you can just uncover so much more information. Yep. The challenge that I sometimes see, and I'm guessing you occasionally run into this in your world too, is somebody presents their idea and they haven't even bothered to go do a Google search on the problem space and see that there are 10 other companies pursuing that, and they have in their presentation, I have no competition. Yeah. And so I think those can be challenging to discredit somebody. And you've got good programs like Launchpad at Octane, which is good at helping people really crystallize that.
Well, I have a 5-point rule that I follow every time. I mean, first and foremost is you got to make sure from an IP perspective you're covered, because you don't want an idea that's not already patented and whatnot. And so do the search early on. Second thing to me is, can you even make it? Can you produce? Can you manufacture it? Because sometimes you have a great idea, but then you run into manufacturing it. Third thing for me is get a proof of concept. You gotta get proof of concept data, and this applies to both tech and healthcare as well too. You gotta get proof of concept data, whether and especially using our terminology, whether it's in animals or humans or whatnot. Fourth is, you gotta make sure that from regulatory perspective, any regulatory authority that you're dealing with, there's no issues with that. And last but not least, can you sell that? Can you commercialize it? Those are 5 things. If you do a good job doing the research early on, more likely than not, you'll be in a good spot. Because those 5 things will allow you to get a better appreciation of whether this idea will be successful or not. And even there, if you are, and I don't expect everyone to be expert in that space. Find people who can help you understanding that. Once you have those 5 points answered, I think you'll probably set yourself up for success after that.
That's a great. I love that summary. I would offer that there might be a 6th, but it's after those 5, which would be to properly capitalize the business. And the reason I say that is that you mentioned this earlier. It may be a $50 million business opportunity. It may be a $1 billion business opportunity. You probably should capitalize those businesses differently.
Absolutely.
And I've run across a lot of entrepreneurs here that are drawn in by this excitement of a venture capital investment. Yeah. And they may have the ability to build a good business. Yeah. And a 10, 20, $50 million business could be a really good business. Yeah. But it may not require the kind of capital that a venture capital who's looking for a $500 million to $1 billion market opportunity is going to push you to. And sometimes those businesses could be drawn into the wrong pathway because of that. So that proper capitalization, I think, is something we don't spend enough time talking about. Absolutely. But is key, I guess.
I fully agree with that.
So I talk a lot here on Accelerate OC about this ambition of how do we as a community in Orange County create unfair advantage for entrepreneurs like you who are committed to starting and building their companies here. So as you think about unfair advantage, of why you would do it in Orange County, what you would hope that the community would provide to you, how do you think about that?
Yeah, no, and it's a great idea, and what it does also, it attracts entrepreneurs from outside as well. That's right. I want to go to Orange County, because Orange County has an environment where I get access to VC, I get access to advice, I guess, from strategy to finance and whatnot, and that's something that can be only created when you have. I mean, some of the stuff is already happening. I think Octane is doing a great job with their Launchpad initiative, and the UCI is doing some innovation as well too. But I think more needs to be done. Setting up more incubators space as well too, where people can come in, in a very cost-effective manner, set up their operation, get access to advice, get access to, job pool. I mean, one thing we also realize that here in Orange County, we have access to a lot of good schools as well too, where
Yes.
where the talent is coming out as well, and not just from academia, but also talent from other big companies as well too. And those are kind of things that entrepreneurs are looking for. And in that environment, I think is to your point, the whole aspiration about creating Orange County as a place that if I want to set something up in, say, healthcare, for example, ophthalmology or skincare, whatever, or medical devices, I see Orange County as the area where the talent is there, resources is there.
Yes.
So I want to gravitate myself, there. And same thing what at one point Silicon Valley was doing, right? The other part I think Orange County does as well too. I think it's still from the living perspective, we still have opportunity where it's very cost effective for people. Even though they get access to greater standard of living, not as expensive as San Francisco or Silicon Valley. So I think those are kind of things that can be done to create more of that environment and bring people here.
That's great. Well, Fauad, we're running out of time here. Paul's given me the time sign, so we're on our final lap here at Accelerate OC. And I always like my guests. I mean, you shared. I loved your 5-point plan for the key things to think about. But I love to give people that opportunity to share a lasting piece of advice or a key lesson that they've learned. So, what's the one key thing you'd love our guests and audience to take away from?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll focus on people, who want to, be the next, generation entrepreneurs and be
Sure.
successful as well
That's great.
too, right? First thing, have confidence. You got to have, believe in what you're doing and yourself, and never be afraid of failure. I mean, that's one thing I always encourage people, that unless you fail, you would never know how to be successful, right? So start with that first. At the same token, there's, I always joke around people, there's entrepreneurs and there are entrepreneurs as well too, right? So it will require a lot of perseverance, and never get dejected. I mean, you got to keep at it, right? I mean, obviously you have a better idea in terms of how to push it forward. It's just one of those things where sometimes there'll be ups and downs, and you got to stick with it. So to me, one message I would pass on to people: if you believe in an idea, stay with it and follow it all the way through.
That's great. That follow it all the way through, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
Well, Fauad, thank you so much for taking us along on the ride today, sharing the story of Bonte. Really excited to see what's next for you with ORNOVI. And, you're doing great work, really leading by example here to other entrepreneurs. And I think a great inspiration to those of us who want to see more innovation and want to see more entrepreneurship here in Orange County. You're definitely doing your part to accelerate OC. Welcome to the family.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You've just listened to Accelerate OC. Join our live recordings every Tuesday morning at accelerateoc.com, or listen, like, and share anytime from your favorite podcast spot. Let's accelerate OC together.